guys! Today we're designing a journal. I'm currently working on the Artificer journal because nobody has asked for that literally ever. Blood Hunters, chillax, you're next. Follow me through the process of creating this new journal. Plus, we'll talk about why I designed the pages like I did. First, we're going to take out Tasha's and we're going to read the Artificer class that's listed in here. I've already kind of done this and I know what I want to focus on when designing my journal. That was the first step. Next, we're going to open up InDesign. I use InDesign because I have been paying for the entire Creative Suite out of pocket since I got out of college. Every time I try to move away from Adobe products, I find that I'm missing a key thing that I know that Adobe can do, and I end up falling back in the same cycle. At this point, it's what I know. I'm pretty confident in my ability in using Adobe Suite, but it isn't for everybody, and it is really expensive. So if you're trying to follow this like a tutorial, maybe this isn't really the best video for you. We're going to be copying the Warlock journal that I already have made. If you look at the table in Tasha's, Artificers only use spell slots up to level 5. This is the same as Warlock's. The Warlock journal will therefore have all of the spells needed. I won't have to add too much, it'll just be tweaking it to get it right. I've opened that document in InDesign recently because I just printed a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that up. Then immediately save it as a different journal because I don't want to mess up my Warlock journal. Artificers Guide to, and we're just gonna leave the title blank because the title takes me forever to figure out. I normally have a better idea of what to name the journal at the end of the whole process after I've gone through all of the different aspects of an artificer. So we'll just save it as this. We'll change the front page, at least the artificer section. Artificer's Guide to, and we'll change this section. I sometimes add tips on the first page, in particular down here on the spell card section. The Druid and Cleric notebooks both have a C symbol for anything that's concentration, so if I have to do something like that, I would add it in here. I don't anticipate having to do that for the Artificer. I also go through and just make sure everything's up to date. I have changed some things in my journals and I want to make sure they're all consistent, but it's kind of hard when you have 20 different types of journals to make sure they all have the same thing. So down here I'm going to make sure that it has like all the right links and that the logo is up to date because I did change something minor in my logo. So just to make sure that all of this is accurate and is matching everything else. Okay, so the cool thing about InDesign is that you can create these layouts that you can then just drop in, so you're not copying and pasting the same layout over and over again. Because of that, I've been able to just keep the same layout and transfer it into different documents. And that has made life so much easier. So on the right-hand side here, you have these master pages over here. These are where you will actually change things. So if I go to the actual sheets, I can't actually edit any of this stuff. Now I can type stuff on top of it, but I can't actually edit what this says. And that's because I've used these master pages so that I have a little bit less work and I have consistency throughout all of my journals. We're just gonna make this bigger so you guys can see a little bit better. You can see I have all the different types of layouts here. So I'm thinking because that Artificer needs to know how many infused items they have, as well as how many infusions that they know, we're going to need to give them a special place to track that. And to do that, we're actually going to reference another character sheet. We're going to actually reference the monk one, and I'll show you why. As you can see on the monk journal, we track key points here. I designed this to work with the transparency sheet so you can very easily use a dry erase marker and use tick marks to count how many key points you've used during a session. I've also included a whole section down here with your typical things that you unlock as a monk in the beginning. These are all things that you'll be able to do with your key points that won't really change as you level. We won't be adding Artificer features to our character sheet because I feel like even though you get magical thinking at level 1, it's a very lengthy description and it's something that as a player I would rather handwrite myself and shorthand it in a box like that. That would also help me remember it better. Obviously, this would not be the case for everybody. I want the player to be able to customize it a little bit to their needs, so they might want to put a different feature down here instead. However, we are going to copy this and turn it into a place that we can track infusions. I will go into the pages and into the character sheet on the right-hand side. We'll double-click that, and we're just going to copy this. We'll go to the Artificer one, go to the character sheet, we're gonna hit paste, but we're going to drag it to the side. This is just so I have it for reference so that I can match the style of other journals. Now an Artificer might have to track a lot of ammo and potions, so instead of making those two boxes smaller, I'm actually going to remove the other attacks and spellcasting because I feel like you'll have enough room to put those on the other sheets. I'm gonna move this up and we're gonna shrink the features and traits slightly. Alright, so we shrank the features and traits slightly, then we're going to bring in our other box, line it up. We're gonna ungroup this. It was probably grouped just because of where it was before. Move this up. And I'm gonna name this. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and change up the box to match what we find in Tasha's. Now the big thing with an Artificer is the items that they can infuse. So they are able to, by the time they reach like level 20, they can infuse up to 6 items. So what I'm going to do is create a spot where they can keep track of each item that they have infused. I want it to be on this page so that I can very easily find it and keep track of it. When it comes to what infusions they know, I'm actually going to use a different page and we'll get to that. But first, let's deal with this sheet. Okay, so I got that done. I'm lucky to be in a game where my husband is an Artificer, so I also added a little section for item owner because I know that my husband has a hard time tracking who has the items that he's given out. Again, I only put 6 in there because you can only have up to 6 infused items. The other question is, how do we track what infusions that this person knows? We're going to use the layout that I actually created for the Eldritch evocations for Warlocks, and we're going to change that into an infusions page. That is partially why we copied the Warlock journal as well. First, we're gonna save because I have this horrible habit of not saving and then losing everything. So this is the layout that I'm talking about for Warlocks. I created it to track your patron. For Artificers, we're going to track all of your class features for your subclass in here. Just an aside, I will never make journals just based on a subclass. A lot of people ask me to, and that's honestly way too much work. Just about every class has 3 to like 6 different subclasses, and they're constantly adding subclasses, and it's just way too much. That's why I added a whole page that you can track your features and traits. Now, maybe not everything will fit on this page, but you can always buy extra blank pages and stick it in here. I'm also expecting most people to write in shorthand because that's what most people do. They don't write word for word. So for an Artificer, you can know up to 12 infusions. We're gonna need more space. So what I'm going to do is actually create a whole second layout I'm also going to make the boxes a little bit bigger and put 6 on each page. One more thing, I'm actually going to have to create another set of master pages, and I'm actually going to copy this set of master pages to make the other master pages. So just FYI when you see what I'm doing. So once I have those pages designed, we're going to stick them into the journal. Again, I make these into master pages. When I go to the individual sections, I'm gonna have to add pages and then apply that new master page to the page. We're gonna put it in between. Because I edited the C3 master page, it's already changed in here, but I'm going to need to add the Infusions page, so I'm just going to add 2 more pages and then drag the Infusions page onto that to change the layout. All right, so that is the basics for the character sheet. Just to go over why I designed some of the other things in here too, I also have a whole box on here for appearance. A lot of people like to draw their entire outfit. That's not me. As well as a place to track treasure, because I always felt like I had like a million gems and I needed to put that somewhere. Next, it is time for spells. Artificer is kind of like a druid or a cleric in the fact that they prepare their spells and they know their entire spell list. So normally what I would do is create the entire spell list, much like I have for this druid one, which I'll show off here, and I would put that into the Artificer journal. However, I am only allowed to do that because of the open gaming license that D&D has with the spell list. So according to this, essentially, anything that's in the SRD you can print and sell in a product, but anything that's not in the SRD, you cannot. Unfortunately, most of Tasha's is not in the SRD. That means if I were to try to sell stuff, I could get into copyright trouble. And while there are plenty of people on like Etsy who take Starbucks cups and like modify the logo and think that they can sell that, I'm not one of those people. I've always tried to follow the copyright laws and be respectful because I love D&D and I don't want to get myself in trouble over something silly that I can avoid. You have to remember, someone else created this and you are essentially stealing it and reselling it. That's not fair to the people who originally created it. Consider if you created something completely new and different and somebody else started selling it and got even more sales than you. That's taking away from you. To avoid all of that debacle, we will not be putting the full spell list into the Artificer journal. That said, I have also talked to my husband and he hardly ever changes his prepared spells, like ever. I feel that we can just put like an average amount of spell cards in here, as well as 6 spells for the cantrips, because you'll never need more than 6 because you never learn more than 6. Even though I could go through this list and pick out the individual spells that are covered by the SRD, that's a lot of work to not include the entire spell list because I wouldn't be able to include any of the spells made in Tasha's. Looking at this spell list, there are about 65 spells. I'm not going to include that many spell cards in the journal because if I did that, you would have way more spell cards than anything else and you really wouldn't be able to take session notes or archive people or any of the other parts of the journal. I'm actually going to stick with what we have for the Warlock, which is about 26 individual spell cards. So I have you have 6 cantrips pages, and then we have the spell card. And if you ever needed more, well, I have page packs for that and you can customize the journal that way. Plus, nobody's going to want to write in all 60 different spells into their notebook. On the spell list, obviously I have this set up for the Warlock originally. So I have the different spells you get from your evocations. We don't need that section, and so I'm going to delete it and actually just put in a notes section. Then you can keep track of any important things you need to remember with your spells when it comes to being an artificer. The other thing I have to do is shorten the journal by 2 pages since I added 2 pages, and that way it'll be the same length as all of my other journals. So most likely I'll take out 2 session pages and call it a day. And we'll double check that it's 128 pages, and it is. And now I'm gonna go through and just tell you why I designed things the way that I did, because I don't have to redesign these pages at all. Figured I would let you guys kind of see what the thought process was behind each of these cards. One of the things I wanted to be able to do was not have to reference the book all the time. I wanted it all in one place and didn't want to like flip through cards and that kind of thing. I created this page specifically for that, and it literally just has all of the information that you would find in the handbook, and you could just write it in here in a Spark Notes type fashion. You can also highlight or circle whether it's verbal, somatic, or material on here. You can put a little check mark to say if it was concentration or not. The other thing I have is the people archives, because I was always losing track of new NPCs that we were meeting. I didn't want to have to go back through hundreds of session notes to find just one person and remember where we met them. Or if we learn new information about someone, I wanted to keep all of that together. That's why I created both the people and the location archives for my journals. I have in here like where we met, a little thing about their occupation or their affiliation, whatever group they're a part of, and then a description, because I always forget what people look like as well, and I'm very bad at remembering to write this down even with all of this information. And then we have a section for notes. The location page is set up in a very similar manner, except I've also included what places it might be near, because that's a little bit easier for me. I can visualize the map and figure out where it is in that space. For the session note, I've based this essentially on the opposite of what I based my Dungeon Master notebooks on. I based it off of the lazy dungeon master's mentality of there's certain things you need to keep track of to give your players. That's secrets and clues, treasure, loot, you need to keep in mind important NPCs and things like that. I've kind of tailored this to mimic what a DM should probably be thinking about giving you every single session, but also tried to make it easier to very quickly find that you mentioned a location or something in this group of sessions notes and be able to archive it very easily. So the left is where the brain dumping happens. You just take notes constantly and like don't even stop. The right hand side is more for after the session or even as you go through the session to keep track of things that you don't want to lose or that you want to archive in those other sections. And I do tend to do this as soon as we hear a person's name. I'll actually just write in this gray box. I've added a section for encounters. I always found that I wasn't able to remember exactly what we fought and how many we fought, and it's important sometimes to know what they were weak against. And then the other thing is treasure and loot, and I also like to put who got what. For some reason, my character is the one holding all the treasure and the loot, but anytime I hand an item out or anything like that, I will put it in here. Session summary, I do write either at the end of the session or I review my notes before the next session and then write the summary in. Even if we played every week, I'm not going to remember every single detail or what I wanted to do and left off with. That's what the session summary is for, as well as the important to remember in the next sessions, either the next date of the next session or what my character wants to do for next session. I feel like that's something you should be doing outside of your session as a way to remember what you wrote down. Really not just enough to like take notes. It's more helpful if, you know, your players are engaged. This is the DM and me talking. It's more helpful to know that you guys are engaged and you're remembering this stuff and I don't have to remember everything for you and I'm not the only one in the game. Writing stuff down is the first step to being a good player. The second step is to actually review what you've written down. It really does mean a lot as a DM to see someone come to the table prepared and remembering everything that they did last session. Recommend doing that. Impress your DM. The next section I have are for dungeon maps, which is just like grid paper. I use this occasionally if it's a really big dungeon and we want to make sure we hit all of the rooms. It's still nice to see how all the rooms connect, and these pages are perfect for that. In my first campaign ever, way back when, we actually used this to even keep track of how big the room was because we were doing more of a theater of the mind playstyle. The only other thing that I have in these is the tab pages, which are just blank sheets. This is so that you can add those tab stickers in. I don't include them. It is extra work for me to make sure that every journal has one, and not everybody likes tab stickers. So we finished the inside of the journal, but now we have to name it, which is like the hardest part for me. So what I'm gonna do is look at the Artificer page again. However, I'm going to be focusing more on this intro section and see if I can find any keywords to add to the title. So all of my journals are titled The Class Names Guide to Blank. Normally 2 words, although for the Ranger it was just 2 syllables, but whatever. I'm thinking something about the word invention, but we'll see. What you see me typing on here might not be the final title of it, because right before I print the first iteration, I do go through and I double check everything. And one of the things that tends to happen is I change my mind about the title. Then we can start working on the actual cover of the journal. Okay, that ended up not being as hard as I thought, although I might change the word extraordinary to wondrous inventions. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I'll think about it for a few days and also bounce it off of people I know. And you'll know because probably by the time I post this video, it will be available in the shop and I'll put a link somewhere. Here, can I do that? I don't know. There'll be links in the description. Now we'll spell check things and then save and change the title to match this title on my InDesign file name. And then we'll go to Illustrator and start making a cover. I have opened up my AI file where I put all of the covers. You can kind of already see covers that I design all have weapon or some sort of item that represents their class. That's the barbarian one, there's a bard one, a cleric. Actually, you can kind of see what I do here on the wizard one. So I'm going to create a new layer and create the artificer item in the middle with some references. So for the wizard one, I was like, I want a quill and book of some sort. I found some line art that kind of mimics what I need it to do. And I'm foiling these, so it's just going to be a gold line. That's what I'll be doing for the artificer, is looking up just some general references and clip art. I'll put them on here. Artificer can be multiple different classes, right? They can make a bunch of potions, they can be a battlesmith. I really enjoyed the, and I don't know that you can see this, but this is the artificer symbol, which is in the book, right? So I really kind of like this idea with a gear and like a wrench and a hammer coming out of it, as well as like a little potion bottle. So I'm probably gonna try to mimic something along the lines of this. Again, I want to put my own twist to it, and also it needs to fit my Art Deco theme. So we'll be doing just a little bit of general research to see what kind of designs and line art is out there for gears and hammers and wrenches and things like that, and see if I can create something that mimics this. The other thing that is on the bottom here is a little saying, right? So for the wizard it says Arcane Scholar. I wanted to say Master of Invention, so I'll change that. Everything else about the cover is going to stay the same. I kind of want all the covers to feel like they're a part of a set style and a collection, so I've kept similar features in each one. This is gonna take a while and I probably won't be talking much because I'm gonna be focused on designing. I also have a grid turned on here. That is because I like to make sure that all of my lines are very straight and even, because Art Deco is one of those styles that has really straight and consistent lines. But because I need it to match up almost perfectly for printing and that kind of thing, I add the dot grid and I snap to it. Without further ado, we're gonna do that. cat interference here. So we had to take a quick break. So there's still a bunch of other things that I do before you actually see the journal and even see it in my shop. After designing the journal, I will print one and put one together. This also means choosing a color cardstock for the cover. Once I'm sure that this one test product is good and there are no issues with it, I will go back into InDesign and not only double check my work for the 4th time, so would that be triple check, quadruple check my work? I then go through the InDesign file and I mark down the amount of pages for each section. So how many spell cards you get, how many dungeon maps you get, etc, etc. And I put that in a little tab note somewhere for me to reference when I go to write the description. I also at this time create the character sheet page pack. There are people who have already bought journals from me who didn't want to wait for the Artificer journal, which I don't blame you, it's a long process for me to design a thing. Instead of forcing them to purchase an entirely new journal, I'm going to offer the character sheets so they can just put those in. I'll also offer the covers as an option to purchase as well. So by the time I upload the products, I'll actually have 3 products to upload. That said, I will create the page pack for the Artificer character sheets, and I'll do that in InDesign. After the InDesign files are done, that's when I will start to create 10 of each of them. So I will foil 10 covers just for selling the covers by themselves. I will print and cut and punch the page packs. I also put them in plastic because I don't want them to get separated or wet in the mail. And then I also make 10 Artificer journals. So that means printing, cutting, punching, foiling the covers, and assembling all of the journals. That process alone will take me 2 to 3 days, depending on how many other journals I'm making. Once all the products are created, I'm still not done. I then take pictures, video, whatever I need to put on the product listings pages, both on Etsy and on my website. So I will go through and I'll do a little flip through video, although I've really slacked on editing those. I have so many that I just haven't had a chance to get to. Once I have the images and the video, I go ahead and start creating the listing for both my website and Etsy. I use the notes I wrote earlier in the description. Go ahead and I'll write the description and I add keywords and whatever else I need to, beat Etsy's other sellers in the search results and etc.